The magnates gambled the observation deck of Paradise Prime, stretched endlessly before Damien Cross as he stared into the star-scattered void, his reflection ghost-like against the transparent aluminum. At 34, he commanded an empire worth more than most planetary economies, yet tonight he felt poorer than the day he'd started with nothing but ambition and a stolen mining probe. His fingers drummed against the crystal rail, each tap echoing the countdown to his company's destruction. 3 days. That's all the time Cross Industries had before the Galactic Trade Consortium seized his assets. The irony wasn't lost on him. The richest human in known space, brought low by a species he'd never even heard of 6 months ago. Mr. Cross? Voice belonged to his assistant Piper, whose usually steady tone carried an edge of panic. The Zephyrian delegation has arrived. They're waiting in Conference Suite Alpha. Damien turned from the viewport, his steel-gray eyes reflecting none of the desperation clawing at his chest. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his custom-tailored suit immaculate despite the circumstances. Image was everything in business, even when that business was collapsing around him. "How do they look?" he asked, adjusting his platinum cufflinks. "Intimidating, sir, very ... alien," was putting it mildly. The Zephyrians had burst onto the galactic scene like a supernova, their technology advancing trade routes by centuries overnight. Their sudden trade embargo against human corporations had sent shockwaves through the economy. Cross Industries, with its aggressive expansion into their territories, had been hit hardest. Damien strode through Paradise Prime's opulent corridors, past fountains that defied gravity and holographic gardens that bloomed with impossible flowers. The resort station had been his pet project, a monument to human achievement and his own success. Now it might be the last thing he owned by week's end. The conference suite doors slid open with a whisper, revealing a scene that made Damien's breath catch. 3 figures sat at the obsidian table, but his attention focused entirely on the woman in the center. She was unmistakably alien, yet achingly beautiful in a way that transcended species. Her skin held an otherworldly luminescence, shifting between pearl and silver like moonlight on water. Delicate patterns of bioluminescent markings traced along her temples and throat, pulsing gently with her heartbeat. Her hair cascaded in waves that seemed to move with their own current, deep midnight blue shot through with threads of starlight. But it was her eyes that captured him completely, vast pools of violet that held the depth of nebulae and the warmth of distant suns. "Mr. Cross," she said, rising gracefully from her chair. Her voice carried musical undertones that made his name sound like a melody. "I am Zara Valtheri, Chief Trade Negotiator for the Zephyrian Collective. These are my advisors, Kenneth Moore and Zalera 9. Damien managed to find his voice, though it took more effort than commanding a boardroom full of corporate sharks. "Valthari, thank you for agreeing to meet. I understand your people have concerns about our operations in Sector 7. Zara's expression remained professionally neutral, but Damien caught a flicker of something in those violet eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or surprise. She'd expected the typical human bluster, not this measured approach. "Concerns is a diplomatic word, Mr. Cross. Your mining operations have disrupted sacred sites, ignored territorial boundaries, and shown blatant disregard for our environmental protocols." Her advisors flanked her like silent guardians, their expressions carved from stone. "I won't insult your intelligence by making excuses," Damien replied, moving to his seat across from her. "My expansion into Zephyrian space was aggressive, perhaps overly so. I built my empire by taking calculated risks, but I miscalculated the importance of your people's cultural sites." Zara tilted her head slightly, the bioluminescent patterns along her throat brightening. "You admit fault? That's unexpected?" From human corporate leadership, unexpected doesn't mean insincere. "I've reviewed the reports, Ms. Valthari. My team's desecrated what your people consider holy ground. That's on me, and I take full responsibility." For the first time since the meeting began, Zara's professional mask slipped slightly. She exchanged glances with her advisors, who seemed equally surprised by his candor. "Responsibility is one thing, Mr. Cross. Consequences are another." Collective's embargo stands until proper reparations are made. What kind of reparations? Zara's eyes hardened. Complete withdrawal from Zephyrian space. Restoration of the damaged sites using your resources. But our methods? And a formal apology broadcast across all human trade networks. Damien felt the weight of financial ruin settling on his shoulders. What she demanded would cost everything. Not just his expansion plans, but his entire corporate structure. Cross. Industries would survive, barely, but he would lose control, lose everything he'd built. That would destroy my company, he said quietly. Your company's survival was forfeited the moment you chose profit over respect. Kenneth Moore spoke for the first time, his voice like grinding stone, but Zara held up a hand, silencing her advisor. Her gaze never left Damien's face, and he found himself drowning in those violet depths. There might be another option, she said slowly. But it would require trust between our species that doesn't currently exist. What kind of option? Joint venture. Your technology, our knowledge of the sectors you've damaged. We work together to restore what was lost, and your company maintains its presence under Zephyrian oversight. Her advisors stiffened, clearly unhappy with this deviation from their hardline stance. But Zara continued, her eyes locked on Damien's. It would mean sharing profits, sharing control, and proving that humans can be partners rather than conquerors. Damien leaned back, his mind racing through the implications. Joint oversight meant Zephyrian representatives on his board, in his facilities, watching every decision. It meant swallowing his pride and accepting that his empire would never again be his alone to command. But it also meant survival. It's more than that. It meant the chance to work alongside this remarkable woman, who had just offered him salvation when she could have demanded his destruction. What guarantee do I have that this partnership would be genuine? That it won't just be a slower method of dismantling my operations? Zara stood and walked to the suite's viewport, her flowing robes catching the light like captured starflow. You have my word, Mr. Cross. But more than that, you have the logical reality that destroying your operations serves no one. The collective needs your mining expertise for our own expansion projects. This partnership benefits both our peoples. Damien joined her at the window, close enough to catch her scent, something like ozone and exotic flowers that made his pulse quicken. And what do you get out of this personally, Ms. Veltheri? Surely there are easier ways to handle a troublesome human corporation. She turned to face him, and the proximity made his breath catch. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin pulsed, more rapidly betraying some inner emotion. Perhaps I believe in second chances, Mr. Cross. Perhaps I see potential in your species that others dismiss as primitive ambition. Their eyes met and held, and Damien felt something electric pass between them. This was dangerous territory, not just the political implications of a human-Zephyrian partnership, but the personal attraction that crackled like lightning in the small space between them. The negotiations would require extended collaboration. Zara continued, her voice softer now. I would need to remain here at Paradise Prime for several weeks while we work out the details. That could be arranged, Damien managed, his usual corporate confidence replaced by something more vulnerable. The station has excellent accommodations for extended stays. Then we have an accord in principle. She extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement, and when their fingers touched, Damien felt that electric sensation again, stronger this time. We have an accord, he agreed, holding her hand perhaps a moment longer than necessary. As the meeting concluded, and the Zephyrian delegation prepared to leave, Zara lingered. Her advisors had already departed, leaving them alone in the conference suite with the stars as witness. Mr. Cross, she said, then paused. Damien, this partnership we're entering it will face opposition from both our peoples. Well, humans who see it as capitulation, Zephyrians who view it as contamination. Are you having second thoughts? She moved closer, her luminous skin casting ethereal patterns on the polished walls. No, but I want you to understand that what we're beginning here is more than just a business arrangement. We're attempting to bridge a gap that many believe should never be crossed. Damien found himself stepping closer as well, drawn by forces he didn't fully understand. The best bridges are built by people willing to meet in the middle. Indeed. Her smile was radiant, transforming her alien features into something achingly beautiful. I look forward to our collaboration, Damien Cross. After she left, Damien remained in the conference suite long into the station's night cycle, staring out at the stars and trying to understand what had just happened. He'd entered the meeting facing financial ruin and emerged with a lifeline. But more than that, he'd encountered someone who challenged everything he thought he knew about aliens, about business, and about himself. 3 days ago, he'd been the richest human in space, master of his own destiny. Now he was embarking on a partnership that would change everything. Drawn by violet eyes and the promise of something he'd never expected to find among the stars, as Paradise Prime rotated slowly through the void, Damien couldn't shake the feeling that his real fortune was just beginning to reveal itself, and it had nothing to do with credits or mining rights. It had everything to do with the extraordinary woman who'd just offered him a second chance at building something that could last beyond any corporate empire. The stars seemed brighter somehow as he finally left the conference suite, their light, reflecting off the station's surfaces like scattered diamonds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new negotiations, and new opportunities to work alongside Zara. Valthari, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow in a way he hadn't in years. Hearts across the void, the weeks that followed, transformed Paradise Prime into something neither human nor Zephyrian, but uniquely both. Zara had taken residence in the station's diplomatic quarters, and her presence seemed to infuse the corridors with new energy. Bioluminescent plants from her homeworld now grew alongside earth roses in the botanical gardens, while Zephyrian art installations cast ethereal shadows beside human sculptures. Damien found himself spending more time in the joint workspace they'd established, not because the negotiations demanded it, but because being near Zara had become as necessary as breathing. She worked with intense focus, her luminous skin shifting colors as she processed complex trade algorithms, occasionally humming melodies that sounded like stellar winds. "The mineral rights in Sector 12 are problematic," she said one evening, her finger tracing patterns on the holographic display. "Your extraction methods are efficient, but destructive. Our people believe the crystalline formations there are sentient." Damien looked up from his own calculations, distracted by the way the display's light caught in her midnight hair. Sentient crystals, that would change everything about how we operate, would it? Zara's violet eyes fixed on his. Would it simply mean finding new methods that honor all forms of consciousness? They'd been working together for 3 weeks, and these philosophical moments had become treasured interruptions to their technical discussions. Zara saw the universe in ways that challenged Damien's purely practical worldview, while his human perspective on progress and ambition fascinated her in return. Damien said, leaning back in his chair, "When I started Cross Industries, I thought success meant owning as much of space as possible, building something so vast that it would outlast me. And now I'm wondering if I had it backwards. Maybe the real achievement is building something worth preserving, not just something big." Zara's bioluminescent markings pulsed gently, a sign he'd learned indicated pleasure or agreement. "Your species has such interesting contradictions, Damien. You can be simultaneously destructive and creative, selfish and selfless." Is that a compliment or criticism? It's an observation. And perhaps an attraction. The word hung between them like a gravitational field, drawing them together across the space that separated their chairs. Damien felt his pulse quicken as Zara moved closer, her ethereal beauty seeming to intensify in the soft lighting of their workspace. "Zara," he said softly, "we should discuss what's happening between us." "What do you believe is happening between us?" Her directness was one of the things he'd come to adore about her. Zephyrians apparently didn't engage in the subtle courtship dances that humans preferred. When they felt something, they acknowledged it. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he admitted, which is probably the worst possible thing that could happen to our negotiations. Zara's skin shifted to deeper silver tones, and her markings brightened noticeably. "Among my people, emotional bonds are considered advantageous to long-term partnerships. They create trust, loyalty, and shared investment in success. Among humans, they're considered a liability in business. Then perhaps humans have been conducting business incorrectly." She stood and moved to the viewport, her reflection ghost-like against the starfield. Damien, what I'm about to tell you must remain between us. The collective's decision to embargo human operations wasn't unanimous. There are factions within our government who want to eliminate human presence in this sector entirely. Damien felt ice form in his chest. Eliminate how? Military action. They believe humans are too aggressive, too unpredictable to coexist with peacefully. She turned to face him, her expression grave. I've been fighting that position for months, arguing that partnership is possible. Our collaboration here is my proof of concept. And if our partnership fails, then war becomes inevitable.
Oh.
Military faction will have the justification they need to act. The weight of responsibility settled on Damien's shoulders like a physical force. It's not just his company, not just his fortune, but the future of human expansion into this sector of space depended on the success of their arrangement. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I needed you to enter this partnership for the right reasons. If you were motivated purely by fear of military action, it wouldn't demonstrate the genuine change in human attitude that I need to show my people. Damien moved to stand beside her at the viewport, their shoulders almost touching. And what if our personal feelings compromise our professional judgment? What if they enhance it? She turned to face him fully, her violet eyes searching his. Face, Damien, I've never experienced what humans call romantic love. My people form logical partnerships based on compatible genetics and shared goals. But what I feel for you? It defies logic, yet makes everything clearer. He reached up to trace one of the luminous patterns along her temple, marveling at the way her skin warmed under his touch. You're risking your career for this.
No.
Risking everything, she corrected. If the collective discovers my emotional involvement with you, I'll be recalled immediately and branded as compromised. But Damien, some risks are worth taking. Their lips met in a kiss that tasted of stardust and possibility. Her skin grew brighter under his touch, bioluminescent patterns racing along her arms and throat in cascading waves of light. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. This changes everything, Damien whispered against her forehead. Or perhaps it changes nothing that matters, Zara replied. We still have a partnership to build, peace to maintain, and futures to secure. The only difference is now we're doing it together. Over the following days, their relationship deepened alongside their professional collaboration. Damien learned to read the subtle color changes in Zara's skin that indicated her moods, while she came to understand the human concepts of sarcasm and intuitive leaps that logic couldn't explain. But their growing intimacy was threatened by forces beyond their control. Ports reached Paradise Prime of increasing tensions between human and Zephyrian military forces. Trade disputes were escalating into border skirmishes, and both governments were under pressure to take stronger stances. I'm being recalled, Zara announced one morning, her skin a pale, distressed silver. The collective wants me back on Zephyr Prime for consultation about the negotiations. Damien felt his world tilt. When? Tomorrow. The transport arrives. At OCX-100? Can you refuse? Not without confirming their suspicions about my objectivity. She moved into his arms, her warmth a comfort against the cold certainty of separation. Damien, there's something else. Intelligence reports suggest the military faction is planning to act regardless of our partnership's success. They see any human presence in Zephyrian space as an eventual threat. Then we need to prove them wrong. Publicly, dramatically, in a way they can't ignore. How? Damien's mind raced through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. Then an idea began to form, born from the same reckless ambition that had built his empire and the love that was reshaping his priorities. What if I gave them everything? They demanded in the original ultimatum. Complete withdrawal from Zephyrian space, full reparations, public apology, everything. That would destroy Cross Industries completely. Not if I did it voluntarily as a gesture of respect and partnership. If I sacrificed my expansion into Zephyrian territories to preserve peace between our species, it would demonstrate human capability for selfless action. Zara stared at him in amazement. You would give up your empire's expansion, your fortune, for peace between our peoples? Yes, for you. He He cupped her luminous face in his hands. Absolutely. Sacrifice would have to be complete, Damien. No hidden assets, no secret deals, total withdrawal, and total transparency. I understand, and it might not work. A military faction might see it as weakness rather than strength. Then at least we'll have tried. And if it does work, we'll have built something more valuable than any corporate empire. We'll have built a bridge between worlds. That night, as Paradise Prime rotated slowly through the void, Damien began the complex process of dismantling everything he'd built beyond Earth's solar system. Asset transfers, personnel relocations, contract cancellations. Each decision stripped away another piece of his vast fortune. Zara worked beside him, helping coordinate the withdrawal with Zephyrian authorities, her skin pulsing with patterns that spoke of pride, fear, and desperate hope. "I've never seen anything like this," she said as dawn approached. A human voluntarily giving up power, wealth, territory, not for profit or strategic advantage, but for principle. "I'm not giving it up," Damien corrected, exhaustion making his voice rough. "I'm investing it. In peace, in partnership, in the possibility that love really can conquer the void between worlds." The next morning, as Zara prepared to depart for Zephyr Prime, she carried with her complete documentation of Damien's unprecedented sacrifice. The richest human in known space had voluntarily relinquished his interstellar empire for the sake of peace. "Will I see you again?" he asked, as they stood in the docking bay, both unwilling to let go. "If the collective accepts your gesture, if peace holds, if we can convince both our peoples that partnership is possible, then yes, you'll see me again. And if not, then what we've shared here will still have been worth everything." She kissed him one final time, her luminous skin blazing with emotion. "I love you, Damien Cross. Whatever happens next, remember that." As her transport disappeared into hyperspace, Damien stood alone in the docking bay, his fortune reduced to a fraction of its former size. His corporate empire transformed into something smaller, but perhaps more meaningful. He'd gambled everything. On love and peace, sacrificing riches for the possibility of redemption. Whether that gamble would pay off remained to be seen. But as he watched the stars wheel slowly past Paradise Prime's viewports, Damien felt no regret. He had discovered that some things were more valuable than credits or control. Love, hope, and the courage to risk everything for what mattered most. These were the true riches that could survive any void. The stars seemed to pulse with promise as he finally left the docking bay, their light reflecting his determination to build a future worthy of the woman who had shown him what he could become. Across the vast distances of space, two hearts had found each other and changed the course of history. Now, only time would tell if love truly could bridge the gap between worlds.